Hi, this time we're going to be looking at a classic Scott Henderson lick taken from the track Mango Prom from the Scott Henderson and Tribal Tech album Doctor He. So let me play it a couple of times, then we'll pull it apart. Before we get into the analysis, just a quick reminder, if you'd like to see a transcription of this or any of my other lines and solos, you'll find a link in the description down below. And if you've enjoyed this, don't forget to click like and subscribe. So this Scott Henderson lick, I have to confess this is one of my favourite of all his licks. From my favourite Scott Henderson Tribal Tech album, one of my favourite tunes by theirs. So, you know, sort of triple whammy. It's a fantastic album if you've not heard it, and this track, I mean, it's a phenomenal composition by Scott Henderson, and his playing, Bob Shepherd's blowing on it as well, Gary Willis, they all sound fabulous on it. So many ideas. And this line itself, it's over E7 sharp 9. Although the progression itself, it kind of, you've got a bar of E7, E7 sharp 9. Then you've got this progression going with a beat on each chord going from C7 to A7, to F sharp 7, to B7, then back to the E7 sharp 9 kind of thing. But to be honest, this lick works equally well just over a straight E7 sharp 9 chord, just, you know, with some nice little out ideas in there. So it's very usable. Also work on E minor 7 as well. It's really nice, sort of classic Scott Henderson, kind of a mixture of blues and really interesting harmony, great phrasing. So he's starting here on the 10th fret on the note D on the top E string, which he plays twice, and then goes down, skips a string and goes down to the G here on the 12th fret on the G string, pulling off to the E, then plays the E again, goes back up to the G. So where these notes are coming from, I mean, we could see this, we can kind of see this as being E minor pentatonic, really. It's over E7 sharp 9. So kind of a bluesy E minor pentatonic. This would be shape 5 of E minor pentatonic. And it's basically skipping between the top and the 3rd string, the notes on there. Then he follows this by a similar idea. It just goes down a fret to this C sharp and then plays the same idea on the G string. In fact, what's happening on the G string is kind of a pedaling idea because he plays different top notes around this. So you get that. And instead he slides into that C sharp. And notes wise, we could see this as being, I guess we could see this as being E Dorian. Over this E7 sharp 9. You could also see it as being E diminished. Another way of looking at it, but it certainly makes sense to think of it in terms of E minor initially because he's playing around this E minor pentatonic. And so you could see it as also the E minor pentatonic with 6th added. Then the chord shifts to C7 for the 2nd bar. And for this he slides into the C on the top string and then plays these same notes, the G to the E, back to the G. This is just a C arpeggio. C, G, E. Then the chord shifts to A7 and he repeats the previous figure. So basically sliding into the C sharp and then playing those same 2 notes. So this time we're outlining basically A7 over this A7 chord. So he's kind of outlining the chords initially. Then the chord goes down to the F sharp. We get this lovely idea. So again, following a similar pattern to what we were doing before, we've got string skip. So he starts in this D sharp on the top string, then goes down to the A on the G string, pulls it off to the F sharp, then moves down to the D string and plays the same shape but in reverse. So going from the C sharp up to the E. Then skips across the string to the B string, 11th fret, to this A sharp or B flat, and slides down to the A. So what's going on here? As I say, it's over this F sharp 7 chord. And I would suggest, I mean, there's different ways we can see this. We could see it as being, again, kind of F sharp minor, F sharp Dorian over this F sharp chord. Based around that shape 5 of F sharp minor pentatonic, but adding the 6th to it. And then this B flat to A. We could see this is coming from E minor pentatonic, blues scale being the flat 5 and the 4. But we could also see this all as being F sharp half step, whole step diminished. And as this F sharp 7 is resolving to a B7, one of the things you can do over a resolving dominant 7th chord is to use the half step, whole step diminished scale. Or another way of looking at it is moving up a half step and playing the standard diminished scale over that chord, which is what he's doing here. This is all F sharp, half step, whole step diminished. And it's kind of a classic Scott Henderson thing, this string skipping diminished idea. These kind of sounds, he likes sort of playing around with that because it's, you can see it as being a mixture of blues scale, minor blues scale, and kind of a diminished sort of thing. And yeah, this line is very much based around this diminished scale. And then the chord resolves to this B7 chord. And over this chord, so we've gone from this A, then we go down to this D sharp or E flat, so it's skipping a string again. So here on the D string on the 13th fret, then down to the D, then to the C, then down to the B. And he's kind of sliding, but reminiscent of the Pink Panther theme. And so these notes, to say it's over a B7 chord. Again, this B7 chord, it's resolving back to the E7 sharp 9, 5-1. So again, these notes, we can see the A is the flat 7th of the B7, and then the D sharp would be the major 3rd. Then the D natural would be the sharp 9 or flat 3rd. And the C would be the flat 2nd, flat 9th. And then down to the root, the B. Again, you can see this as being all diminished, kind of B half step, whole step diminished. You could also see it as being B altered scale. Because the notes come from both. We could certainly see, being as he was playing around diminished in the previous line, you know, would make sense that he was continuing the diminished idea on. but either sort of explanation works. And as is often the case with Scott Henderson, there's lots of different ways to analyse what's going on with him harmonically. And yeah, he's resolving nicely, sliding down to this B, the fifth over the E7 sharp 9. And he closes this out with the kind of bluesy little idea. So we're over the E. So here we've got, it's kind of got a ghosted sort of C sharp. It's hard to hear. I mean, it could be a C. It sounds like C sharp to me. Then going up to the E, then you can just hear the slightest ghost of a B note in there. And these notes, you can see them if we're seeing that as a C sharp. See that as being E major pentatonic. Or the relative minor of E major pentatonic, C sharp minor pentatonic. Or you could see it as being E minor pentatonic with a sixth added. Then he follows this shifting up to E minor pentatonic. And to the minor third to the root, the G to the E. Then finishing with a real bluesy figure, bending up from the A to the A sharp. Bending up to the flat 5, and then ending on the 4th. Incidentally, that G, he just gives a slight kind of quarter bend on it. Let's say, you know, classic Scott Henderson, classic mix of blues and jazz. Great phrasing, great vibe, really interesting note choice. So let's try putting this all together slowly. Here we go. 3 and 4. So I hope you've enjoyed this look at a classic Scott Henderson lick, one of my favourites. As I mentioned before, if you'd like to see a transcription of this, you'll find a link in the description down below. If you've enjoyed the video, do click like and subscribe. That's almost it from me, but I'm going to close by playing this at half speed with a backing track, then a couple of times back up to tempo to finish.